the other day I was I was kind of thinking about how I've so often spoken on 11/11 or very near there in November for the past couple of years. And today is November 8th. So I was like, okay, is there some meaning there? Because I'm kind of just a nerd that way with the metaphysical. Um, so I looked at the number eight, and it's an incredibly spiritual number. It's about new beginnings and creation. And isn't that apropos for where we are right now? And was actually, sort of the whole piece, what I'm wanted to speak about today. There's the biblical piece of, God rested on the seventh day after all that creation. And then the next day was a big new beginning with using all that had been created. There's also in the number eight, the infinity symbol, if you turn eight on its side. And how beautiful is that to consider that new beginning exists within all of the potential of infinity. And that's always the case, right? Every moment is a new beginning. Every moment has all the potential of the absolute. So here we are in this moment, yet again, a new beginning. And I guess I am feeling many, many things, because while there is the relief and the celebration of getting to step forward with a leaders who we expect will inspire more unity and more honor of the predicament that we face on the planet right now. And I think, what is so present with me is is what's always there with any turning point. And is that we recognize it as the turning point that it is. A turning point can't be a turning point unless we recognize it as such. And then the other piece is that we act on that recognition. That's what makes a turning point really full of everything it can be full of. And I read this little bit that I don't even know. I've been doing so much research lately, but somewhere I read that the secret of change is to focus all your energy not on fighting the old, but in building the new. So, that's another piece of a turning point, is to turn our attention away from what we've been fearful of and what we haven't liked about what has worked in the past, and to really change our orientation to where we want to go in this moment. Really what we are feeling called to offer in this moment, because we're being called. We've been being called for so long, being called to, being called by the angels of the future, and being called by the experiences of the past to take hold of this moment and stop waiting for the right set of circumstances in order to really bring what we have to bring to the moment. So often it's like about, oh, as soon as there's a new president, then I'll, really get it going. Or as soon as I have enough of whatever, housing or money or relationship, then I can really have what I need to bring my full effulgence to life. So we're being called. The 8 is also a symbol of regeneration. Creation is also always about regeneration, generating something new, causing something new to happen. So, but it's like, what do we need in order to be those regenerative cells? So, an image that I wanted to share with you, and I'm going to share my screen right now. Where is there it is. And there's that. Where do I get to see the whole PowerPoint?
Share that.
Oh, the whole PowerPoint?
Yeah, not just that one slide.
I think if you share it, you'd be all right.
Okay, so it's this.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Everybody see that okay?
Mm-hmm.
That is the Mendorla symbol. It's also the one I'm wearing. This is and look at the 8 that exists in that. It's so funny, the synchronicity of whenever I'm putting together ideas, the universe just starts to co-create with me and say, hey, look, this is so cool. You're listening. Yeah. So this is a symbol that's been meaningful to me for a very long time. It's an ancient symbol. They say it was inscribed on the Ark of the Covenant. But it's also found in almost every old wisdom tradition before Christianity even existed. It's called the Mendorla, and Mendorla means almond in Italian. So there's that almond shape in between where those 2 circles merge.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
That almond shape right there in the middle of those 2 inner circles. And then, of course, surrounded by the entire circle. So, I mean, there's just so much to say about this, but it has that essence of creation and inclusivity and balance. The balance of the 2. And it is often said that this talks about the balance of heaven and earth, the spiritual and the physical, all existing along that axis. But there's a merging of those 2 circles, so that inner piece can be larger or bigger. And, that inner circle, that outer circle would expand to accommodate that, of course. So it's also the interaction of the male and the female, the feminine and the masculine, which, as we know, is so important to the evolutionary piece that we're doing right now on the planet. That inside merging piece has also been thought to be the soul. The soul is where the heavenly, the spiritual, joins with the physical, worldly, earthly. And in that intersection is our soul that holds both, and that is creating itself at this moment on the planet. And it's because of that co-creation of spirit and matter where we find like infinite possibility. And I think that's the thing to remember, is that when we are fully acting from our soul, when our soul is fully activated, we've got all the possibility and creative potential of the infinite, of spirit available to us, as well as all of the profound sensory, worldly, emotional strength of being embodied here in human form, which we can sometimes think of as so limited and so brutal, and that we rail against it and want to bypass into the spiritual. But it's because we're embodied here in our physical, emotional beings that we have a really profound opportunity. I think of those Wim Wenders movies. There was one remake called City of Angels, where the angels are sort of watching the humans do their work and feeling longing arising in them to be embodied in human form and get to feel the pain and suffering of being human, because you don't get to feel that when you're just in the, all that is. We get to experience pain. And while we sometimes really have a hard time with that, it is the evolutionary impulse that creates so many turning points and so many opportunities, and is that beauty of being human. So learning to be the bridge between earth and spirit is one of the fundamental lessons and destinies of being human. It's the game of being here. And I think sometimes we get too far into one or the other. It's very tempting to, and we just sort of slide into one or the other, and we can get very identified with the limitations of being here on the planet and forget that, if we really are activating our soul presence, we have no idea what may be possible. And I think that is the whole basis of the hope that I keep choosing in this life, even against all the odds that keep compounding in this day and age. So how do we be that bridger? How do we bridge what's next? How do we create the greatest potential for moving forward? And what so I also want to just, because I want to go back to this slide. So this is a slide that maybe you've seen because it's been passed around for a long time. And it's kind of that, like, duh, why wouldn't we just, so in answer to that question, what if it's a big hoax? Because we create a better world for nothing. Is that even possible, to create a better world for nothing? Why would that be nothing? When you look at all those beautiful things, sustainability, green jobs, healthy children, clean air, what if we, with everything we have to give it, we're just about creating anything on that list that shows up to us as a better world. It can be, it's a much longer list than that. But we all have those things that are really alive for us, that are part of that better world, that evolutionary possibility. And what if we put everything we have in the greatest relationship, the greatest co-creative allowing with spirit that we can access? What if we did that? And it, it didn't show, and the things that we were putting ourselves to weren't really showing up. would we stop? Like, those are the questions, I think, that are really, really calling to us right now. And it's why I chose the title of this talk as How to Keep Showing Up No Matter What. Because we have these conditions on our hope. I've been looking at and researching and really trying to take in what thought leaders have been saying about hope for many years and kind of where they're all at now. Like, what's the narrative that feels thoughtful and empowering and inclusive of science and the trends that we've seen on the planet, and like taking all of what we put into our ability to discern right now as human beings, and so how are we showing up? What is the sort of best inspiring but sober and awake orientation that people are choosing? And of course, it's all across the spectrum. But I look to people like Joanna Macy, who some of you may be familiar with. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. She, of course, did the beautiful work called, that talks about the great turning and the work that reconnects. And so much of her work is about how we are reconnecting to one another. And if there's a book that I could really suggest right now, it would be hers, called Active Hope. I mean, she's just one of those amazing feminine thought leaders who's been serving us with her sleeves rolled up for a long time. And she's 91, and I just heard her on a podcast the other day, and she sounds as awake and vital and inspiring and challenging as she ever has at 91. So I want to read you just a little piece from her book, Active Hope. She says, active hope is not wishful thinking. Active hope is not waiting to be rescued by some savior. Active hope is waking up to the beauty of life on whose behalf we can act. We belong to this world. The web of life is calling us forth at this time. We've come a long way, and we're here to play our part. With active hope, we realize that there are adventures in store, strengths to discover, and comrades to link arms with. Active hope is a readiness to discover the strengths in ourselves and in others, a readiness to discover the reasons for hope and the occasions for love, a readiness to discover the size and strength of our hearts, and quickness of mind, our steadiness of purpose, our own authority, our love for life, the liveliness in our curiosity, the unsuspected deep well of patience and diligence, the keenness of our senses, and our capacity to lead. None of these can be discovered in an armchair or without risk. Yeah, tell it, Joanna. So there's, of course, so much in that, but it brought up for me some things that like are jumping off places to some other practices, because I think we need to remember that it's our practices that allow us to keep showing up with active hope, like hope as a verb. It's something to be practiced, and it's not easy. What I've found is that, I guess this is just the way I'm wired, but I just sort of keep throwing myself into challenging situations that are risky. that are risky kind of publicly with how people see me. They're risky because I don't know if I'm going to have funding to pull them off, or enough support, or if people will care, or if I can do it, or, I'm a single mom and I've got 2 kids. So who knows, what's going to be calling on me at any moment. But I keep throwing myself into situations I perceive to be without guarantee and with a certain amount of challenge and risk. Because otherwise, we're kind of playing it safe, right? If I throw myself into something I know I can succeed at, that's just part of the old paradigm. There's nothing new or creative. There's no creativity in that. There's no part of like what might be possible that we don't even know is possible. We've got to throw ourselves into things and like hone our senses, hone those capacities that Joanne is talking about, that our capacity to lead, our capacity to be hopeful in the when despair is heavy on us. The ability to remember to be inclusive when we just want to play with our people our peeps who we know will prop us up. No, but what if we go play with the people that we're scared of, that we don't know will like us or accept us? Like that's the kind of capacity that we need to be, sharpening our swords on. I don't want to use that analogy, but it's like there's a keenness, there's a sharpness that's really useful right now. Maybe to just like to cut away the old stuff, the old weeds that are kind of like pulling on us to just sort of be in our safe zone. No, like now is the time to be like moving forward, heart first, in relationship with spirit, not made small by any of the things that have made us small in the past. Like this is the new creative potential. So 2 of the things that I want to share, 2 of the practices, and these are meta practices. I love that term. It means like going beyond. A meta practice is something that causes evolution, that causes transformation. So non-attachment. So how do we give ourselves fully to all those things on that list that we care so deeply about, that are such a big part of our value system, that are part of what define us? How do we give ourselves to that stuff totally and not be attached to what we are able to create or not, and on what timeline it shows up or not? How do we keep showing up no matter what, not attached, but giving ourselves fully and creatively and with our huge hearts and leadership? Like that's the meta practice. It's no mystery that, that shows up in all the wisdom traditions of the world, especially Buddhism. Do not be attached to that which you desire. That's tricky, right? Those of us who have been working with that a long time. It's not easy, but you got to keep giving yourself to it and not be attached to the progress that you think you've made or you haven't. You just keep showing up no matter what. Because like that's what there is to do. Like that's what makes the miracles possible. Not that you're attached to the miracles. So the other piece is selfless service, and again, this is a meta practice that we see in every wisdom tradition. When you can really give yourself to something and do your best to leave your ego aside. So it's not about how good you look doing the thing. It's not about what you're able to achieve and what kind of kudos you get for that. The meta practice is to do it selflessly And I think that's where the partnership with spirit becomes really helpful, because when we get so in the self, in our small self, we have to remember, oh yeah, I can open myself to that grace that is always there, just waiting for me to open myself to it and to co-create with. Like grace is always there, just waiting to, shower us with creative thought and strength and empathy and humility and compassion and all of those things that make selfless service such a joy. It might not always make us happy, but it gives us access to joy. And that's like such an important distinction, because we spend so much time thinking like, if we're happy, then we must be succeeding. But the happiness piece is just sort of fleeting. It's one of those emotions that just comes and goes. But joy, that's a whole different experience. And joy is what happens out of selfless service. It's what we experience when we're really in that space of selfless service. It's the joy of knowing that we are acting in alignment with our deepest truth. There's no greater joy than that, right? When you're acting in alignment with your integrity, the wholeness of your integrity, that outer circle of the Mendorla, in alignment, the integrity, that line that is the axis of where the soul is meeting, where the earth and sky meet, that's joy. And I think that's all what we just have such a dearth of in our lives, because it's not something that our culture really teaches us. Our culture says, be happy, be successful, be secure, be safe, play it safe. Make sure you got your nugget, prep your little bunker. But we forget that we can have our little bunker all buffed out, but what about the rest of the world who's going to come knocking? If we haven't done the work of including everyone, there's always somebody coming knocking to want to take us down or want to take away what they need for their own security. It's like that, I feel like, is the real work right now. It's what Joanna Macy's talking about, the work that reconnects. The greatest security, the greatest gift we can give in our communities is more connection, more understanding, more care. So I think that's a really helpful lens. Like, how strong can I make you? How more self-sufficient can I make you? How much more understanding can I create between you and me, so that as things get really hard, we know what we can count on with each other. I almost all the thought leaders that I've heard for almost a decade now that I've been listening have said, get organized. In the food system work that I've been doing, for so long, the message has been, get organized, know who's doing what, know who's got resources and how to put them together in new ways. And this is the kind of work that, we all can be doing in whatever shows up on that list that's calling to us. It's like, what kind of greater organizing and connection and social fabric can I create around whatever that piece is that's calling to me? The last piece I want to talk about is that piece of connecting to nature. And for a long time, I've had this practice, and I just recently, it's starting to show up to me as this really central practice in my life. I make myself get out just about every day for time in nature, solo as much as possible, so I can just be listening. I put myself in a flow state, whether it's through skiing or inline skating or even hiking. Any of those motions, like walking, uses both sides of our body, so it helps knit together our both hemispheres of our brain, and it creates a flow state. Like any activity that does that helps put us in a state where we're more receptive to creative thought. And doing that with the support of nature, like I notice when I go out, I'm really opening myself to the elements. I make sure, like I have the right gear, but so that I can be really fully present in the outdoors and join with my nature allies in a really present way. So I'm not like, if it's raining, going, oh my God, I'm getting wet and this is awful, or it's, oh, I don't have enough on, so I'm cold, or I don't have water, I'm not dehydrated. I just like make sure I'm prepared so I can be present and receptive and creative, because that's the creative time where I'm listening with nature to help guide me with whatever it is. I'm always bringing something to that space. There's always something that we're looking for some guidance with or some support with. And I just go and I listen and I show up, and I'm making myself strong, but I'm making myself more so receptive, like really receptive. And what I've noticed has shifted, and this is the big shift, is that often we grow up in this culture with a relationship to nature as this thing that either we want to protect this thing, we love this thing, or it's just sort of the backdrop to our, adventure that we're going to post on Facebook. Isn't it nice? And doesn't it look cool behind me? And it's this I-it relationship where I am separate from it. And what's shifting is it's shifting to that I-thou that Martin Buber talked about, that where there's no separation, where, oh, I am now existing within this. This is all me. This is all my creative potential. I can go and hug that tree and feel the oneness that we share, feel the aliveness, feel the love and the support that's there for me. I can breathe in this air and know that, I can do that Tonglen experience of breathing in and changing whatever. I do that selfless service of breathing in anything that I feel is tangled, and when I breathe out, it's restored to integrity. And it's like, because we're not separate, it's a all-inclusive, non-separate experience. And when we approach time in nature that way, we get to be practicing that meta practice of oneness, and experience all of the creative potential that's available there for us, all the healing and clarity and infinite possibility and humility. I heard someone talking about how we think of the natural world as mother, as Gaia, and if we start to get into that mindset of, oh my God, look how awful we are as humans, we should just, it's a good thing we're being, we're in extinction so that Gaia can go back to, doing her thing without our, crazy destruction. But if we see ourselves as not separate, it's like maybe we can use that analogy of like the children, and we're the children and this is our mother planet. The mother doesn't want to be separate from her children. The mother loves her children, no matter if they're addicts or murderers or white supremacists. The mother still loves that child, and sees the infinite potential available there in that child. And so like, is that maybe our, part of our great potential right now is to be in that divine feminine mother and see each other as not separate from us. And to see our love for each other and to know that love is the transformational power. That love and redemption and forgiveness is what creates the greatest connection. And what if we play with that?